Imagine two people living in the same city. They wake at similar times, they work demanding jobs, they earn incomes that most would consider comfortable. Yet every evening, their emotional reality is completely different. One person opens their banking app with hesitation, almost avoiding the number they are about to see. There is a quiet tension in their chest. Bills feel close. Unexpected problems feel dangerous. The other person checks their account without fear. Not excitement, not luxury, just calm. What makes this difference interesting is that it is not primarily about income. It is about psychology. Today, we are not discussing extreme frugality or traditional budgeting advice. Instead, we are exploring how human behavior, attention, and perception quietly shape financial security long before numbers ever do. Most people think ownership is simple. You buy something and it becomes part of your life. But psychologically, ownership creates responsibility. Every object you own requires small amounts of attention. It must be cleaned, stored, maintained, remembered, repaired, or eventually replaced. None of these actions feel significant individually, yet together they create what psychologists call cognitive load. Your brain constantly scans your environment for unfinished tasks. Items lying unused or disorganized signal incomplete decisions. Even when you are not consciously thinking about them, your brain is processing them in the background. Studies in environmental psychology suggest cluttered environments increase stress levels and reduce concentration because the brain struggles to filter unnecessary stimuli. In other words, possessions occupy mental space even when they provide no benefit. Ownership is not only financial, it is psychological occupation. Have you ever noticed how exciting it feels to anticipate a purchase? You imagine how life will improve. You picture yourself using the item. You feel motivated and optimistic. This reaction is biological. Dopamine, the brain chemical associated with reward and motivation, rises strongest during anticipation, not possession. The brain enjoys the possibility of improvement more than the reality of ownership. Once the object becomes familiar, the emotional reward fades quickly. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. Humans rapidly adjust to new conditions, returning to a baseline level of satisfaction. The result is subtle but powerful. The emotional benefit of buying is temporary. The financial commitment is permanent. Over time, repeated purchases create increasing obligations without increasing long-term happiness. Modern consumer systems rely heavily on upgrades. Your phone still works, but a faster one exists. Your furniture is comfortable, but styles evolve. Your car runs reliably, but a redesigned version appears. The brain interprets novelty as improvement because historically, new resources often meant survival advantages. But in modern environments, novelty rarely equals meaningful improvement. Each upgrade raises expectations slightly higher. Soon, what once felt luxurious feels ordinary. This creates a psychological treadmill. Satisfaction stays constant while expenses gradually rise. Many people interpret rising expenses as a cost of adulthood or success. In reality, it is often adaptation at work. Another reason possessions influence finances lies in identity. Objects communicate messages, both to others and to ourselves. A workspace may signal productivity. Clothing may signal belonging. Technology may signal competence or status. According to social comparison theory, humans naturally evaluate themselves relative to others. We look outward to understand where we stand. Problems emerge when purchases become tools for emotional reassurance rather than practical usefulness. If identity depends heavily on visible possessions, spending pressure never disappears because identity must constantly be reinforced. But when identity shifts towards skills, relationships, or personal values, consumption pressure decreases naturally. The need to prove something through ownership fades. Most purchasing decisions are guided by affordability. People ask, "Can I pay for this?" A psychologically stronger question is different. Will this improve my life repeatedly? Value is created through consistent use and meaningful impact, not momentary excitement. A rarely used object becomes expensive regardless of price. A frequently used object becomes efficient, even if initially costly. This perspective changes how the brain evaluates purchases. It replaces impulse with reflection. Instead of reacting emotionally, you begin evaluating behaviorally. Many people believe financial discipline depends on strong self-control. Behavioral science suggests otherwise. Human decisions are heavily influenced by environment. We tend to follow the easiest available path. If spending requires one click, while saving requires planning, spending becomes the default outcome. Small environmental adjustments can dramatically change behavior. Delaying purchases introduces reflection. Automating savings removes decision fatigue. Reducing exposure to advertising lowers desire formation. These changes work because they reduce reliance on willpower, which fluctuates throughout the day. Designing systems is more reliable than relying on motivation. One psychological trap affecting high earners and low earners alike is undefined expectations. Without a clear idea of what enough looks like, progress becomes impossible to recognize. Each improvement becomes temporary because new standards immediately replace old ones. Income increases, but satisfaction does not. Defining enough creates psychological closure. It establishes a point where growth shifts from consumption toward freedom. People who define sufficiency often report reduced anxiety because their goals become stable rather than endlessly moving. Traditional culture measures wealth through accumulation, houses, cars, and visible success markers. But psychologically, wealth is better understood as optionality. Optionality means having choices, the ability to leave unhealthy situations, flexibility during emergencies, freedom to pursue meaningful opportunities. Research on well-being consistently shows perceived control over life strongly predicts happiness and mental stability. Financial margin increases perceived control. In this sense, money functions less as status and more as psychological safety. Spending behavior often reflects emotional states. When people feel uncertain or stressed, purchases can temporarily restore feelings of control or progress. The relief is real but short-lived. If spending reduces long-term security, anxiety returns stronger than before. This creates a reinforcing cycle. Stress to spending to temporary relief to reduced security to more stress. However, the opposite cycle also exists. Intentional spending leads to saving. Saving builds security. Security reduces emotional spending. Over time, these cycles compound quietly, shaping financial trajectories without dramatic events. Change rarely begins with drastic action. Instead, try a small experiment. Walk through your home slowly and pause at different items. Ask yourself, if this disappeared today, would I intentionally replace it? This question removes past justifications and focuses on present value. Many people discover that they own objects connected to past ambitions, temporary interests, or emotional moments, rather than current needs. Awareness alone often changes future decisions. Owning less is often misunderstood as sacrifice. In reality, it is a shift in relationship with possessions. Instead of accumulating automatically, you begin choosing deliberately. Life becomes quieter. Cleaning takes less effort. Decisions require less energy. Financial pressure softens because fewer obligations compete for income. The goal is not emptiness. The goal is alignment. When possessions match genuine needs and values, satisfaction stabilizes. Financial calm appears not because income suddenly changes, but because expectations and behavior finally move in the same direction. Financial peace rarely comes from endlessly adding more. More often, it emerges when unnecessary complexity is removed, when attention is freed, when expectations become clear, when ownership becomes intentional instead of automatic. At that point, money stops feeling like something you constantly chase. It becomes something that quietly supports the life you actually want to live. And sometimes, the surprising truth is this: having less to manage can feel like finally having enough.